You are listening to Talking Star Wars.
Hello, all. I'm Connor,
And I'm Alex.
and we are talking Star Wars.
Uh, Today, we are going to continue on our recent theme of analyzing the plethora of recent Star Wars media releases by doing our analysis of The Mandalorian and Grogu.
I would say it's a long-awaited movie as well. I think it's been about 7 years since The Rise of Skywalker, and while the gap between A Phantom Menace and The Force Awakens was considerably wider, um, when we've had Star Wars films almost every year consecutively, it feels like a bit of a wait.
Yeah, and that was off the coattails of the mixed reception, we'll say, of The Rise of Skywalker. Then again, people have been declaring Star Wars dead after everything that's come out after A New Hope.
Yeah.
But if you'd like to know our thoughts about The Rise of Skywalker and what we liked about it and where we thought really a broader creative decision could have improved the film, look at our missed opportunities about the sequel trilogy episode. But that said, yeah, this is the first Star Wars movie that's released since 2019, the first theatrical movie, though there have been plenty of digital media released on Disney Plus in the interim. So first, I guess we can go with this as a film. Um, why do we think that this particular visual story was wide released in cinema? Was it an economic decision, an artistic decision? Connor, what's your take on this?
It's a bit of both. I I don't know if I think it's fair to say that Star Wars has hit a bit of fatigue. I know that, well, I really enjoyed the third season of Mandalorian. It didn't seem to receive the best reception as it was released back in 2023. Um, and I think that subsequently, with the Acolyte not doing as well as, you know, Disney would have liked, with Andor wrapping up uh, without any continuation. I think that it just was the right time to have some bigger tentpole piece of media rather than just, oh, here's another season of something for Disney Plus.
Yeah, there's also the consideration that Pedro Pascal is now one of Hollywood's hottest movie stars. I mean, both on streaming services and in film, the man is killing it with appearances in a half dozen extremely successful properties that we could just list off if we wanted. And
Mhm.
his name being attached as the primary star is certainly a draw. And The Mandalorian certainly upped its star power. We had a cameo by Martin Scorsese. We had
Mhm.
Sigourney Weaver appearing as a colonel of the New Republic. So definitely leaning into the idea that prestige film requires a prestige cast.
I also feel like just the production of this film was so much more polished. It was so much more theatrical. There's just a bevy of different creatures and droids and effects that I don't know could have been pulled off with a Disney Plus budget.
Agreed, agreed. Yeah, so for those who haven't seen the movie, or just to orient everyone to where we are, The Mandalorian and Grogu is a 2026 Star Wars film coming in at just over 2 hours. So, a tightly told story following the adventures of Din Djarin, the titular Mandalorian, and his adopted son and ward and apprentice, Grogu, of the same species as Yoda, after he successfully become a landowner on Navarro and become a contractor for the New Republic. So this is an immediate sequel, really, to the trajectory we see his character on at the end of season three of The Mandalorian. Um, while you may not need to see the previous three seasons of The Mandalorian and the integral season, the Book of Boba Fett, which is really just Mandalorian season 2.5 in many respects, I would say you would get more out of this movie having had that background. Plus, that some of it, despite what some people see as uneven quality and uneven commitment to narrative consequences, is still excellent television.
And I think, you know, when we have this transition from small screen to silver screen, My only real critique in what's happening with the Mandalorian and Grogu is that it does definitely feel like a season condensed into one narrative arc, which I've talked about it before. I fan edit, and sometimes when you fan edit a piece of media, if it's television, it's still really easy to feel like, oh, this is episode one, this is episode two, this is episode three, because the way that these little narrative bits are written, everything is almost wrapped up, and then we continue on to the next sequence. I think, it wasn't done incredibly poorly in this film, but I still think it has that sense, that veneer of, you know what, this was a season of a TV show.
You could definitely tell has not strayed far from its serial television roots. So, spoilers for The Mandalorian and Grogu throughout this podcast, but the story stakes are low compared to pretty much every other Star Wars movie that's ever been released, with potentially the exception of Solo. But even then, probably not. I think this is probably the lowest single stakes Star Wars movie ever produced. That does not reduce my enjoyment of the movie at all. I am a big believer that stories of a variety of stakes, from the fate of the galaxy to the fate of a child to the fate of a father, are perfect stakes for a movie. But I would agree that, and I agree with another reviewer that I saw, where like this felt like three really, really polished Mandalorian episodes with 10 times the budget, crafted into a film. And not as a negative, but I would certainly agree with that assessment. This, while having everything you need for a film, such as an antagonist, rising action, falling action, it does have these like mid film peaks and intermittent temporary antagonists that reminds me a lot of Indiana Jones or other movies that are drawing from a serial background, as in like a serialized story, except this is actually directly coming from its own previous serialized storytelling.
Mhm. If anything, it makes me want to go back to the previous seasons and see if they can be span edited down into a similar, satisfying kind of narrative structure.
Ultimately, I still think I before we go into more analysis, I will say that I highly enjoy The Mandalorian and Grogu. It has been, I think, divisive among the Star Wars fan base. Often we're recording these months to years after the work has come out. This is one of our first time. It's our first time being able to comment on a movie immediately after it came out, and
Mhm.
I think generally what I've noticed is that I think some people's standards were much higher than it would be for a release on just Disney Plus, uh, despite what maybe we have seen for some over criticism of The Acolyte. And I think some people uh, found the film wanting, or they wanted a larger scale story, and some people like us have really enjoyed the film. So I guess since in our zeitgeist and our predilection for always wanting to focus first on the positives of an experience. Connor, what did you really like about the film? Uh, Visually, storytelling wise, as a piece of franchise fiction, what were your initial impressions and thoughts?
So initially, I had a smile on my face throughout the entire film experience. I was just, uh, I mean, I wasn't as delighted as I was when we saw The Force Awakens, because again, so much more time had been spent. A lot of people thought that Star Wars was done for. The Clone Wars had been trickling out. And when I saw The Force Awakens, I was in just awe, just an ecstasy of seeing all of these familiar, um, comforting visuals. At The Mandalorian, I might not have had that same heightened expectation walking into it, but I had the same sort of like, you know what, this is a Star Wars film. Everything that I'm like dipping into is part of the universe, it's part of the fun, it's part of the exhilaration, all the while not being like some of my least favorite moments in recent media. And I'll say starting with Rogue One, where it's like, hey, here's, Grand Moff Tarkin. Here's You'll Be Dead guy. Here's R2D2. This film had absolutely none of that sort of catering to the fans that even previous seasons of The Mandalorian had come to. This, everything within this film narrative might be connected tangentially. Like, yes, Mando is a member of the Mandalorian clan. Rhoda the Hutt is the son of Jabba the Hutt. But instead of just being, hey, this is the same exact thing that you saw before and liked, it's a response to it. So I think that would be my biggest takeaway of, wow, this is what really stuck with me as being something that's positive. There are other elements, but before I get into those, what do you think your most positive takeaway was?
I enjoyed the verisimilitude of the story as feeling like it actually happened in the setting of Star Wars, in the trajectory that we see with the galaxy and the story as it happens. Uh, because this is not a film that is looking, to be frank, that is looking to like break a ton of new ground and explore a lot of new things setting wise. This is looking to take a microscope and zoom in on an area to tell a smaller stake story within the already established bounds of the Star Wars universe. So I enjoyed that it all felt very believable. And all felt very true to the characters that we have. I've seen some critiques that Din Djarin doesn't really go over a lot of character growth in this film. And I would agree. I think he's already gone through a lot of that growth. We just simply see it continue in how he is friendly with his neighbors, in how and he does make several choices in the film, which are the mark of a character-driven drama like this. He refuses to turn Rhoda the Hutt over to the twins. He uh, He gives Grogu more independence and trusts him, and he accepts the patronage of the New Republic and does not protest when they uh, more and more he owes his loyalty and his friendship to them. So I would not say that Din Djarin shows no character development, but I would say the majority of the film's character development certainly falls on Grogu, who is more so than in any other media depicting him a character here and not just a plot device or a an escort quest for Din Djarin.
It's going to be my next question, or my next point, rather. Just the next positive that I had in mind. In previous seasons of The Mandalorian, has Grogu ever saved and cared for Din as much as he had in this film? Because I can't recall him, other than using some force healing, um, really having such a protective role over his uh, father figure.
No, like Grogu has certainly saved Din in acute single instances before, from levitating the Mudhorn to using force healing to uh, using the force in a few other areas, but has also caused us many complications. And it's not entirely he Grogu. We're not quite sure what the exact age is, and also given the fact that he certainly is a neglected child that is
Mhm.
also traumatized. Grogu suffering from a version of aphasia, where he is mute. He understands language. I'm hoping at some point he can communicate via perhaps written communication, but just does not speak, and that's just who he is. Likely due to his long neglect and trauma, but is still depicted here as a thinking being. And yeah,
Mhm.
this is the first time we see Grogu left to his own devices to not only be in the being saved, but having to save Din Djarin in turn, his
Yeah.
father.
And he, whether the film is hitting you over the head with it, he is taking up the mantle of Yoda. I thought that him instinctually creating a hut was adorable, not to be confused with the antagonistic huts of the film, but an actual physical mud hut. And then just finding a cane to make it around the forest. Adorable, adorable. But outside of those, you know, bright sparks and moments, yeah, he is a fully capable um, character that's able to survive on his own without needing Mando to save him all the time, which I worried might have been the case if they just continued on the same path that they were with the TV show itself.
Yeah, and we see him even do what his father taught him, which is to find allies wherever he goes. He befriends the fishmonger on the planet, who then makes him the antidote for his dad. So much like Din makes friends and allies wherever he goes, as people see past his gruff exterior and realize, oh, this is actually a good man. Grogu, who's a little bit less intimidating initially physically, also attracts that same sort of loyalty and friendship from the people that he meets.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'm going to call him Babu Fricks because I know they have an alien name, but Babu Frick is Babu Frick. Um,
they're I believe the Anzellans.
Having that relationship turn around to them initially being terrified of Grogu to now being just staunch allies of him is just fantastic.
Yes, they are indeed the Anzellans. Yes, and giving them also more agency and character. They're not just a laugh, like they're not just a comic relief. They have their own ship. They befriend Grogu, and they're obviously like, "Of course, we're going to help you get your dad back. He's our friend. He's not just our client." And while we don't have the firepower to necessarily go toe to toe with the Hutts, like because there's a version of this story where they f- they are only going with a Grogu to find their fourth member of their family, and as
Mhm.
soon as they find him, they leave. But they don't because Grogu needs their help and came to them for help and came with them to rescue their own family. And of course, that fourth Anzellan was saved by Din even when Din was imprisoned by Embo. So I liked them also being some of our main characters.
And
So yeah,
what a fantastic pull from Rise of Skywalker from a film that's not my favorite, in the Star Wars franchise. They pulled the best element to include in this newest one.
yeah, nothing's more Star Wars than a 1 foot tall droid smith and ship mechanic
Hmm.
that speaks in broken basic and befriends tiny children.
Hmm.
Uh, so, what do we think of the antagonists in the film and sort of the plot in general? Because, I mean, due to its serial roots, we have a series of increasingly powerful antagonists until we reach the final antagonist of the film, being um, one man versus nature in the giant water snake, and one man versus man being the Hutt twins, who are looking
Hmm.
to consolidate control over the Hutt territories bordering the New Republic.
Yeah, I thought that was just a perfect progression because the main element that's being explored in Mandalorian, in Ahsoka, not so much in Skeleton Crew, but we have this idea of the Imperial Remnant, and the just the overall structure of introducing us to the film is Mando pursuing a number of these Imperial Remnant members, and that ties them into the overarching plot with the Hutts. So I thought it worked. It to feel Star Wars, to feel like Star Wars is a nebulous comparison, but this very much felt like Star Wars, where, like an early Simpsons episode, we start off in this corner of our universe and we end up on the entire other end, um, just through the serendipity of how the plot moves. Um, Also being uh, really a sequel to Return of the Jedi, we have this power vacuum that's left by Jabba the Hutt's absence. And knowing that the Hutts are the biggest force in the sort of galactic underworld, having this new story sort of explain, well, here's how that all ended up. Because we knew it wasn't going to end up well. There's no universe where the Hutts win this conflict, but having that portrayed on film, I think was done quite well. And also, just one note, I appreciate how the two Hutt twins spoke very kind of stilted basic, whereas Rada, the next generation, speaks perfectly fine basic. It's how, it's reflective of, people learning different languages, immigrants in our country nowadays. The later generations don't have that affect that the previous ones do.
Yeah, definitely a decision Rada made to also differentiate himself from Hutts, who often could perfectly understand Basic. Like, I don't believe Jabba chose not to learn Basic as a power move,
Hmm.
and employ translators. Who knows how much he actually understood or could speak himself. And then the twins sort of being a younger generation a little bit than Jabba, being able to speak accented basic. And then we see Rada being able to code switch between the languages, and
Mhm.
even in his demeanor. Uh, and I'll say I didn't expect Rada the Hutt to be one of my favorite characters. And, dumbass teenage. Well, how old would he be at this point? He was
He was a
six
baby in the
months.
Clone Wars. Yeah.
He's 6 months old during the opening months of the Clone Wars. So the Clone Wars lasts for 3 to 4 years, and then the Empire
Mid-40s.
lasts for 21 years, and then this is 5-ish years after.
Mhm.
So who knows what Hutt's? But he's a young adult by Hutt standards, I suppose, a late 20s to early 30s. But we know Jabba the Hutt lived for hundreds of years, so
Yeah.
he's the rebellious college kid age for a Hutt.
Mhm. And he plays it up well. And I think that the idea of legacy, it's not directly drawn in the film, but him being, I'm the son of Jabba the Hutt. We have Grogu, who is commonly known as Baby Yoda. Um, he is no one but, you know, li- he's nothing but living in the shadow of Yoda. Everything that we expect from him, we expect him to reach a Yoda status of proficiency. When really, he's not, the end all be all Jedi Master. He is just as much of Mandalorian lineage, if not more so, than Jedi at this point.
Yeah, I think Jeremy Allen White did an amazing job as the voice actor for Rada, where you totally believed every decision that he made, even when they were the wrong one, because he has this image of himself as being self-sufficient. But I mean, he's still a college kid who needs to then be given a dose of reality. And when he is, though, we see him, as with any good character, making choices and changing when confronted with a moral dilemma.
This might be
So
one point where I'm in, the minority. I'm an outlier. I think they could have gotten anyone to play Road of the Hutt because he didn't sound like Jeremy Allen White to me, and I had seen half of Shameless and some of The Bear, and they had so much voice modulation on him that it really could have been, you know, anyone but Steve Bloom at this point.
yeah, I mean, I don't, I didn't have any particular attachment to him, but I think that as a voice actor, he did a great job with the character,
The character, I think he was
modulation and
quite
all.
strong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, and that's really what you need. Is like disappearing into the role. I would say would be a point in his favor.
hmm There we go. That's a good positive to pull from it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other characters in the film. While we're doing a review of the characters, we have Din Djarin, obviously. We have Grogu as our main area. We talked about our main antagonists, the Tut twins. So the other characters on the sort of New Republic side, we have two primary New Republic characters in a new character, the Colonel, played by Sigourney Weaver,
Ward.
and then
Mhm.
Colonel, sorry, Colonel what? Colonel Ward, yes.
Ward. Yeah.
Yep.
I thought for sure that Sigourney Weaver was going to be the Imperial remnant coin that they were looking for, just because she was so serious, and I felt a little intimidated or threatened by her performance in the first half of the film that I really thought that it was going to be a twist and infiltrating our New Republic is this Imperial that no one's ever seen. And I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, but at the same point, I don't think she had a whole lot to do.
I mean, she has the role that the police captain has in the police procedural, with the cop who needs to turn in his badge, or with the captain in a military drama. I mean, she's there to be the inciting greater force that, yeah, can show up with the cavalry at the end, and help everyone out. So I liked her in that role, and I think she did it well. And I think this has been also part of the rehabilitation tour they've been doing for the New Republic, which again was established and then destroyed almost in the same breath in The Force Awakens.
Mhm.
Uh, for reasons you can also go, that our thoughts on that, also go look at our episode again on the lost opportunities of the sequel trilogy. But I've enjoyed seeing, like, how would a former rebellion, now made the de facto, not de facto, the actual military, of a
Hmm.
far-reaching state that's leery of central authority, given that the last central authority terrorized the entire galaxy, how
Right.
would they establish themselves? And yeah, it's by having good relationships with people like Din Djarin. It's not by like oppressive military means. It's like,
Mhm.
but then when you got to bring the hammer down, oh, the Hutts have been playing us for fools and are trying to feed wrong information to our intelligence apparatus, which could make us vulnerable to outside allies. It's all right. Bring out the Y-wings and the proton bombers and bomb them into the Stone Age.
Mhm.
Um, which is it's a move that the Republic certainly never would have done, and it's a move that the Rebellion couldn't do. Um, it's like, but it's also the Hutts never would have tested the Empire in such a way to make them do this. So I think there was definitely like, oh, the New Republic is weak, and there's definitely things like, you know how strong one X-wing is. The droid got like we see Din Djarin struggling a little bit with the droid Gatra, though he himself is a certified badass. But the New
Mhm.
Republic tears through them like a hot knife through butter. It's like we cut our teeth on fighting Star Destroyers and the entire might of the Empire. The mercenary forces of a Hutt cartel don't intimidate our squadron at all.
I saw some critique on the fact that Nal Hutta fell so quickly, but I also consider that with the death of Jabba the Hutt, a lot of their power has splintered. I mean, look at the Book of Boba Fett. You have Boba Fett, for better or worse, taking control of, crime on Tatooine, which is the seat of power for the Hutts.
Well, and I don't think this was the like we don't see Nar Shaddaa or any of the other Hutt strongholds. And this was never really their military stronghold of the Hutts. They
Hmm.
did their best not to court military attention for greater powers. This is why Jabba, would call people to his palace on Tatooine. And I felt like maybe I'm not sure they like took down the entire Hutt cartel. Well, for those who have read the expanded universe, you know that most of the Hutt cartel died at the hands of Darth Vader in the closing days of the Empire.
Hmm.
He was a little miffed at them, and so he slaughtered most of them. But then leaving only Jabba and a few others behind. But we also have like I think the New Republic just took out the twins as a like maybe a abject lesson to the rest of the Hutts. Like, don't interfere in our affairs, because I don't see them like occupying the planet. We see this is just a way of these are people who have attacked our own, and so we have taken out their compound. No one
Hmm.
else do this again.
Yeah, they're establishing who has the main seat in the galaxy.
Biggest X-wing on the block, as it were.
Yeah. I have to say I loved it. I've seen X-Wing pilots in blue. Normally they wear orange, red, but seeing them in green, I don't know why, just had me so excited. I don't know if I've seen that before in the Star Wars media, but we have different squadrons and having them be color coded just makes my art education brain very happy.
Yeah, definitely. You can see them even more so over the course of how we've seen the New Republic forces over the course of the Mandalorian becoming more of a professional military, to the
Hmm.
point where the military we see that Poe Dameron is in, um, and even in the Resistance, how we see the New Republic right before the Force Awakens happens, where maybe largely a ceremonial military at that point, given that after Mon Mothma resigns, there's not a lot of pressure for a big central military.
Hmm.
But that's many years in the future after this show. But there's still a polished professional military force with academies and officers and procedures. Uh, it's different than anything else we've seen because the Republic never had a standing military outside the Clone Wars. Its member states provided local forces, a very federalist sort of setup. And then there was a distrust of centralized military after the Empire, and so it was small, but they were a professional volunteer military, many of whom's their high-ranking officers and were members of the rebellion against the Empire.
Right. It brings to mind a big missed opportunity. There's a Black Series toy of Jaina Solo wearing a black X-Wing uniform as part of the Black Squadron, and that is just too cool for me to ignore. Justice for the Solo twins, but here's not the place for that. Um, I guess aside from our new character in Sigourney Weaver's ward, uh, would you say that Zeb is the next sort of supporting character here?
I think he's the next most important character in the film, and it's a direct continuation of his character from Rebels. It makes perfect sense that he would remain in the military. He's been in the military his entire life. He was a, royal guard on his home planet
Mhm.
until they were betrayed, and then he joined the rebellion, and then seamlessly appears translated into remaining in the New Republic's military. No longer under Hera's command because Hera is now an general. I'm not sure why she didn't take the admiral title, but probably because she was commanding both air and land forces. But she certainly is not doing what Zeb is good at, which is direct hands-on violence for specific missions. So I like that Zeb has been deployed into a position that plays to his strengths. I'm still hoping we see him get to interact with Ezra
Oh,
come
sure.
Ahsoka season 2. But yeah, I loved the rapport because Din Djarin is so reserved. He needs someone to spark off of him.
Hmm.
And Steve Blum's Zeb is the perfect guy to do that for in the same way he was for Kanan, in the same way he was for Hera. Uh, yeah, and we'll see him jumping around like a Lasat, using his bow rifle, both as a electro weapon and as a rifle. Uh, yeah, and then showing up as the cavalry several times
Hmm.
to pick people up and save people. It felt like perfect continuation of his character from Rebels, where he's landed in a career he likes, doing what he likes to do, working with the people he wants to work with. Uh, Even if I think he's dialed back the sourness a little bit, because I think winning the war and the empire he fought against has given Zeb a great deal of fulfillment that he
Hmm.
appeared to bring to the whole. Because there's always this edge of sadness to him in Rebels a little bit.
Yeah, with all of his
Uh,
people who are subjugated and lost.
yeah, now he knows that there's now another home world for the Lasat that he discovered in Rebels, and so yeah, he's got this sort of like satisfied, like I am where I need to be, and he's not expecting everyone he loves and dies to be killed in any moment like he was in Rebels.
I have two positive notes and one less so positive note. Um, so just to put it out there, biggest fan of Zeb. Uh, Rebels was um, harder for me to watch than Clone Wars or anything like that. I continually rewrote it in my head, saying, "Ah, what if Zeb was just Rex? What if they had Rex there from the beginning? What if Ezra dot dot dot, etc., etc." So many countless things throughout the show just because he makes me so mad. Um, I'll say this in positive about Zeb. They didn't force his inclusion as like, hey, you remember this guy. You remember Zeb. You watched Rebels, right? No, there's nothing in there that was like, oh, he said his catchphrase or they referenced this thing. It was just, he's there. And for fans like you and fans like me who have seen all of the media, it's a nice touch to have him just as a nice background character. Second positive, he had a fantastic hallway fight scene. In a franchise known for their fantastic hallway fight scenes, they gave Zeb a good one. Um, but my negative is that like I would have enjoyed one or two instances explaining how Zeb and Mando got together. I know that Mando is working as a sort of freelance agent of the New Republic. I can see the sort of history of, oh yeah, it makes sense for him to be working with Mando, but not having the explanation on film just made me feel like oh, this is interesting. It would be sort of if like Hondo was in the film talking to Mando like they had been old friends, and that history is missed. Um, so my one suggestion for the film, uh, and could be either for the character of Zeb or for Ward, Sigourney Weaver. That could easily been uh, Gina Carano's character. Now that she's supposedly back on board with Disney, she played the character of, I should know this by
Cara Dune.
now. She played Cara Dune. She had connections in Mando season one, season two, part of the New Republic. Seeing her, go up in the ranks and take the place of Zeb, take the place of Ward, would have been a more natural continuation of what we've seen in the Mando series thus far. So if I had one nitpick, that's the one.
And I see where you're coming from. I agree with you that not playing into the fan service of Zeb's appearance was a good decision. So I'm glad that there wasn't, he's like, not like a couple of references would have been fine, but it didn't reach critical mass of like, what's Lethal? Why is he referencing
Mhm.
this? He's saying his catch run about Melu runs. Nope, it's just he felt seamlessly into the story, just acted as he would, as the character would, which is
Mhm.
a positive. So we've sort of looked at a lot of the characters, and we've talked about um, this is a piece of fitting into the Star Wars lore and franchise. But talking about the events of the film itself, the cinematography, the fight scenes, the character moments, not in the context of like the franchise, but just within the film itself. What are we feeling about that? Because I personally thought that the some of the increased budget definitely showed in the complexity of the action scenes.
Yes, I would say like if we take a look at something like Solo, um, that cinematography definitely degrades the film's overall presence. It's gray, it's murky, it's dark, it's hard to see details. Um, I didn't notice any of those distractions in this film. I felt like every large set piece was very well thought out, and whether it be what do they call it, sketched out. They had concept sketches or they had animatics or what, just taking a look at the spectacle of the giant white snake fight or the two immense droid fight or just the pursuit of the different alien creatures through the Blade Runner-esque city were all done to the tens. That's where I think the film's strengths lay, really.
Yeah, even the most complicated fight scene in the movie, which was the Djarik match, you're always feeling you know who is where and what they're doing and what their plan is and why they're doing what they're doing, which is hard to do in an action scene with like 10 different actors with four different motivations. And I
Right.
think this film did that. Um, whether it's Mando just trying to survive, um, or whether okay, I need to make the shot from this captured AT-AT and then jet back out of here. I always know physically in the space that the universe is asking me to accept where everyone is and what they're doing and why they're doing it,
Mhm.
which is, I think, one of the most important cinematographic things you can do in an action-focused movie. I also liked seeing, just in general, Din Djarin as any Mandalorian being forced to use weapons he wasn't familiar with. So using a captured spear and a sword and all these other things to fight his way free of all the situations he was in was quite satisfying for him as a Mandalorian.
That's where his true skill lies. It's not in, I've mastered the Force, I've mastered my lightsaber. It's, no, I've mastered combat, and therefore anything that you put in my hands is now a weapon.
I am the weapon. The actual
Oh, yeah.
weapons are just tools. Yeah.
Exactly. One thing that I just love about the visuals I learned after the fact was that Phil Tippett, the Phil Tippett who worked on 1977's A New Hope, Star Wars, who created the Djarik chess game, worked on the effects of this movie, specifically the two large Hutt droids. He made actual 3D models and used stop motion to animate them and create some shots for the film.
I did not know that, and that is amazing. They were definitely leaning into the whole used future aspect of Star Wars, which much of this film did. The universe felt lived in, everything from the diner that Mando was in to the giant droids. So definitely one of the original contributors to the 1977 film would, of course, understand that aesthetic.
And I hope they're just old Republic droids. Like this is some Frankenstein monstrosity that was created when the birth of droids occurred, and the Hutts have just kept them for millennia. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
It's such a spectacle.
well, they were definitely enforcers for the droid Gatra, so they were mercenary droids that were brought in
Mhm.
here temporarily for that purpose. So these are like, I think they were like rescued foundry droids or something intended to do something dangerous and disposable, freed by the droid Gatra, who of course believe in droid freedom, and then believe the best way to do that is by crime, lots and lots of crime. So I did love all the different droid types that were in part of the droid Gatra.
We have the
Uh,
destroyer droids, or not the destroyers, the super battle droids.
Yeah, the super battle droid's always giving Din Djarin more trouble than the BD-1 droid or the
Mhm.
B-1 battle droids. We do see some BD units on the New Republic base, which was always more droid exposure.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but yeah, it's not really Star Wars unless there's droids and creatures and someone using the Force. And
Yes.
we have Grogu filling that last one. Not necessary for every story, but technically checking it off the list. And then, of course, having lots of creatures in this film. And I also love that Grogu's Force use, going back to that point, wasn't just a get out of jail free card for Din. It saved his life, but did not like awaken him, and so he needed help from a local. I appreciated it not just being a panacea or solve the plot button, that Grogu was force sensitive.
And it gave us, it gave the film a good moment of pause just between all of the action and all the spectacle. Um, I don't know. I guess at this point, we've lavished the film for so much. If there's, I know I've picked out some complaints, and as far as it feels like a season pulled together as a film, or I personally don't like Zeb, which isn't really a critique of the film, but it's just my own internal uh, bias that I need to address. But do you think there's anything that draws this film back compared to, let's say specifically the non-saga films? Like if you were to compare this to Rogue One, Solo, and the Clone Wars sort of introduction, do you think this stands at the same level, higher, lower? What do you think?
So, of those, I would say that Rogue One is the best film out of all of them, and I wouldn't say that this is as good as Rogue One is as far as a film, because Rogue One was not coming from a serialized fiction background, and also has a very clear point. There is a very clear climax with a very clear antagonist. The whole thing is just tense. The pacing is amazing. So, The Mandalorian and Grogu is really good in many of those areas, but at the same time, the primary focus is okay. We're going to free Rada, and then we got to survive, and then I must kill the people who unmasked me or took my helmet off. So you understanding the motivations of every character, but doesn't quite tie the personal motivations of Din with the greater motivations of the New Republic in the same way that eventually, like um, Jin from high the Rogue One eventually accepts the morals that she's working for and has sort of a commitment to the cause.
Mhm.
So I would say that having the plot be unified in one direction is something that the Mandalorian Grogu could have used more of. Uh, and yeah, like some sense of the greater context within which it's happening. I like the small stakes, but why are we so concerned about these Imperial warlords? How many of them are left? Is there a
Mhm.
clue that some are fleeing into wild space? I wanted it to like, you're trying to not branch out too much, but at the same time, you're bringing in these characters from the other stories. Yeah, it would make sense to continue in that vein if you can.
Mhm. That makes sense. I think if I had to consider these um, independent non-saga films, I love Solo. Uh, Solo just speaks to me. There are some minimal, uh, like inappropriate humor or inappropriate referencing moments that I feel like so many uh, different Star Wars properties failed to appropriate into their own narrative. But Solo to me was this feels like a fun lived-in universe with a character whose arc I can understand and relate to. Um, I would go then with The Mandalorian and Grogu just because of how it perfected the Star Wars spectacle. Um, Different space fights, different creature fights, just offering a variety of the eye candy that Star Wars is really known for. Because as much as it's a narrative kind of story, it's also a visual um, experience. And I think Mandalorian, that's what it succeeds at the best. I like Rogue One, but I think that Rogue One, what holds me back from liking it so much is the sort of the lack of connection I have with the characters, and not considering Andor, that's particularly the case. That and the just the different kinds of fan service that they offer. Um, and the Clone Wars isn't bad, but it also should have not been a movie. It should have just been, this is the Adult Swim introduction to the new Clone Wars.
Yeah, the
Putting it
Clone
on the
Wars
big screen was
movie.
kind of misleading.
Yeah, an animated movie is certainly a fine thing to have in Star Wars, but it was the hubris of George Lucas is why that was released in theaters.
Hmm. The
Um,
lack of hubris.
I don't know, pick your hubris.
Mhm.
Um, it was a miscalculation by someone's part. Like, yes, this that would have been. I mean, as far as even premiere episodes of the show, they are some of the least good episodes of the Clone Wars, even just viewed as episodes of the show. Introduced some cool characters like Ventress, but overall, um, yeah, I put them at the bottom of the pack. But what I did want more of in The Mandalorian, to continue some critiquing, is I wanted to feel like more people were in peril. Din feels almost invulnerable in his armor, yet we still never seen him directly shoot his armor in this film, which is
Mhm.
kind of like it's almost like we're too afraid to scuff him too much, or like too afraid to like show too much gun violence. I don't know. Compared to the extreme violence that we see, or the appropriate violence that we see in Maul Shadow Lord, it felt a little sanitized. Like,
Mhm.
Din can shoot as many droids as he wants and break out people's horns, but he never gets shot. Um, so, but yeah, I never really felt like he was too much in danger, even when he was poisoned. Grogu saved him. I never. Um, the part that why Embo was so good in the film is he did make it seem like Din might be vulnerable.
Mhm.
But I was also never terribly concerned for Rada the Hutt. So just give us some more believable peril. Uh, Maybe have someone get eaten by something halfway through the film. I don't know.
Oh, one of the Bible
Somewhere,
bricks, that would have been devastating.
it was probably why they didn't do it because this. And let's be honest, the target age for this show is like 10 and up. So
Mhm.
you're not going to upset the 7 to 10-year-old by eating one of the Enzellans. Um, whereas
Ah, the soft
your
youth.
yeah your Y14 and up more mature show like Maul Shadow Lord, which we'll discuss in a future episode, you can kill people off left and right if you need to for the stakes of the story.
Yeah, your favorite droids? Absolutely. I
What was
I
that?
do I did think that for a moment, for a second, this might have been the end of Din Djarin. I thought that we
Yeah,
might have gotten that, but I should have known better. I should have known who
yeah.
this was geared towards, but I really thought that after he was poisoned, we would have just a sad, uh, just frying fest akin to a Castaway where our character's best friend just passed, and I'm glad it didn't go in that direction. I'm surprised it didn't go in that direction. Um, but ultimately, I guess I'm glad.
Yeah, the scene where he's poisoned and running through the swamp fighting and then slowly succumbing to the poison is a great scene. But again, then that is the closest I felt to the feeling that Din was in real peril.
Mhm.
But it was definitely a little bit Saturday morning cartoon when he's knocked out at the prison and thrown into the dark ring, and then he's uh, falls asleep from poison, goes into a coma, and then wakes up in the hut. So
Mhm.
yeah, wanted some more danger for our characters.
Absolutely.
But that's a relatively minor nitpick. for the type of story that we're telling.
I had one more question. Where, I guess to wrap this conversation up, how do you want to see Mando and Grogu return in the Star Wars universe? Do we give them a season four? Do we relegate them to the big screen? Do they appear somewhere else? Where would you rather see them appear next?
Well, I think I don't want to just see more of these same stories. So I think we've sort of like this is kind of a coda to like everything that Din Djarin and Grogu have gone through. We firmly established Grogu as his son, that they are a family unit, that they will care for each other. We've seen Din Djarin's character growth, working for the New Republic, no longer being like Embo acting like he used to, and making friends and uh, doing the jobs that he wants to do and having his own freedom, getting a Razor Crest back and customizing it to his own specs.
Hmm.
So, but I don't want to just see like another story of like next one. It's like, oh, here's a crime boss or anything. But I would love to see more of the Mandalorian and Grogu, together or separately, whether they show up as contractors in Ahsoka season two, or whether we have a book about what they're up to. I'm fine with. I would love to see them. I would think another season of something is probably more appropriate than another show.
Hmm.
Uh, but I would like to be working towards some other new goal because Moff Gideon is dead, who was our villain for a long time. So we need something other scaffolding to sort of give them something to do that's not just fight the New Republic's latest threat.
Hmm.
How
I
about for you?
would I would go out on a limb and say that I would really love if they made a series or a film that's heir to the Empire that has Mando and Ahsoka as supporting characters to a new Luke, Leia, and Han battling Thrawn. Um, that would be my pie in the sky dream. I could take the flip side of that, where Ahsoka and Mando are the main characters, and we have a support of the trio um, against Thrawn. But that would be my ideal because it's always hard when a series goes from, you know, serialized television, motion picture, more seasons of the television show. Makes me think of X-Files, where it's just hard to kind of buy back into the fact that this is a TV show again after seeing it on the big screen. So that's
All
my
right.
hope. Yeah.
So yeah, we've definitely done a big survey of most of our thoughts about the movie and where we think the characters could go from here. But what do we think of it whole overall, sort of as we wrap up here in our episode? What's the takeaway? What's your opinion on this as a piece of Star Wars media? Did it need to be a movie? And who'd you recommend it for?
I think it did need to be a movie just because of the scope, the scale. I would recommend it to the same people I would recommend A New Hope to, really. Um, and as part of a Star Wars media, I think it is another solid entry, and really it's done nothing wrong to uh, take energy or power away from franchise as a whole.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would love to see these characters again. Maybe take some bigger swings as far as choices, consequences, and character actions. The story did feel a little bit safe at some points, but overall, a great return to the silver screen for Star Wars. I hope it's very successful, and I hope that we see more stories in its vein soon.
Likewise,
All right, this has been Talking Star Wars, our analysis of the Mandalorian and Grogu. Join us in our for our next episode in the future, where we'll discuss Maul, the Shadow Lord.
until then.
We'll see you sometime soon in a galaxy right here.